Government fails, the world's off its rails, leaders are whacked, democracy is under attack. It's time to get smart, folks, time to get real. Let's cut through the crap, tell us how you feel. Let's cue the talent, let's meet the host. Podcast by George.
Hello, hi, how are you? Welcome back. Welcome on in to another podcast by George. And we've got a good one for you today. We've got Kimberly Graham on the Podcast by George live line. Kimberly Graham is a candidate for the U.S. Senate from the great state of Iowa. She's trying to work her way through a gaggle of Democratic candidates. There's about a half dozen or so in the upcoming primary here in very short order, for an opportunity to go against Joni Ernst. And I'm sure everybody's familiar with Joni Ernst because she's not just big news in the state of Iowa. She's big news everywhere. She burst onto the scene here in her first term and has made quite a splash. And she's just about everything I don't like in a politician, actually.'t a motorcycle riding, gun toting, right-wing loving, Republican from the great state of Iowa again, our junior senator, and she brags about having castrated hogs and she knows all about farming and all this. And it's all a bunch of baloney. And I'll tell you what, I know this for a fact. When she first announced her candidacy, she told everybody that she put bread wrappers over her shoes, over her boots on the farm because they were poor and they were in the mud out there. I got news for you. I was poor. I grew up in the mud. I put bread wrappers over my shoes. It doesn't work, folks. And every parent wants to give that a try. The bread wrappers are free. It looks like it'll work, but the first time you step into some serious mud, those bread wrappers are about 3 steps behind you. And you can't put them inside your shoes. That doesn't work either. They just disintegrate, come apart. It's just a bunch of baloney. It was just a good story based in fact. Like I said, we tried that. No, it doesn't work. And on a more serious matter, I don't know if you followed the news or not. Maybe you remember a couple of years ago, her husband filed for divorce. And there were some very serious accusations in there that if she were a man, if it was a role reversal, I think would have brought down her Senate seat. Certainly would have prevented her from being reelected. But in the world we live in, it just kind of got swept under the rug and just kind of got forgotten. Well, that's who Kimberly Graham is looking for an opportunity to run against here in 2020. And I'm just delighted to have her on the Podcast by George live line. And I want to read this little bio very quickly. Now, she's literally down the road from me. I can ride my bike to her house from where I'm doing this podcast, basically. But she was born, and I didn't know this, on the Camp Pendleton Marine Corps base in Oceanside, California. Obtained an undergraduate degree from the University of California, Irvine in June 1991, and a JD from Drake University Law School in May 1999. So we're kindred spirits there. That's my alma mater, although I didn't go to the law school. My daughter did. She graduated from there. Her professional experience includes working as an attorney and as a certified mediator. She established her own law firm and worked primarily in family and juvenile law, where her work included serving as the guardian ad litem for children in the Polk County, Iowa juvenile drug court system. And among the affiliations that she has, she's affiliated with Emerge Iowa, the Nebraska Iowa NAACP, and the Iowa Citizens for Community Improvement. Now, there's others, but that's what Ballotpedia has. And, of course, I'm a big fan of CCI, so, that's all good to me. But anyway, that's kind of long-winded, which I tend to be at times. Kimberly, welcome to a Podcast by George.
Well, thanks very much for having me. I appreciate it.
When we first met, again, this is very important to me. And I've got a podcast up about this. This past winter, I was at a big climate crisis rally in Iowa. It was right before the Iowa caucuses. All of the national media were here. And so the climate crisis, folks, and that's a big deal to me. It's a big deal on my podcast. We talk about it all the time. Well, thousands of media representatives were there, and they scheduled this specifically to coincide with that, to get a platform, to get heard by national media around the world, really. Well, they didn't turn out, hardly at all. More importantly, whenever I go to rallies or something like this, I look around always and think, where the hell are the elected representatives? Where are the politicians? There weren't very many there, but one that was you. And I know it's because the climate catastrophe, the climate crisis, is very near and dear to your heart.
Yeah. So, what I tell people, and, it usually elicits some sort of knowing giggles from the parents that I'm talking to. I tell the story about last summer, my son, who's 20 years old, and I were talking, and our conversation wasn't about the climate. I don't even remember what it was about, whatever. And out of the blue during that conversation, he kind of, when we weren't talking for a few minutes, and then he said, Mama, I think I might buy land in north central Canada. And I said, why, Max? Yeah. And he said, because I think it might be the only place I'll be able to live in 20 or 30 years. And, for those of us who are older, I'm 55, we might not realize how young people think about the climate crisis, maybe in a different way than those of us who, are on the outside edge of our lifespan, versus those who are really very young and really just beginning their lives. And that's something that all of the young people that I talk about or talk with express so much fear and concern about. And so I tell the parents, I always say, look, any of the parents hearing this probably will understand what I'm about to say. I would do anything to save or protect my son, including running for the United States Senate. And people kind of laugh, and that certainly isn't the entire reason I'm running, but it's a big part of the reason I'm running. And it's not only the climate, but it's healthcare. My son's 20. He won't be able to stay on his dad's insurance after 5.5 more years from now. What if he has a job in the gig economy, which is what so many jobs that young people have now are? They're not the kind of jobs that, our generation might have had, or my parents' generation might have had, where you get a good job, it has an okay pay, it has health insurance, it has a pension, and you stay there for 40 years and you retire. Those kind of jobs are really not that common anymore. And what's going to happen to him if he has a healthcare crisis, or what if he needs insulin and he turns to rationing it? I mean, we had a young man die, 2 young people die in the Dubuque area in the last 1.5 years here in Iowa, and I'm sure there's been more we didn't hear about, from rationing insulin. And so, all of these issues affect all of us, but of course, those of us who are going to be here longer than others of us, it's going to affect for a longer time. So the climate crisis is incredibly important to me, and it's a tricky thing to get people fired up about, at least some people. And I can understand why. It's easier to get more fired up about something that you perceive as really up in your face. Like if you're trying to buy prescription medications, and they're telling you that'll be $800 a month, and you don't have $800 a month. That's more immediate. That's more in front of you. Whereas understanding that, the climate crisis is going to perhaps make this planet somewhere we can't really live very easily in the near future, the nearish future, is harder sometimes to appreciate unless you really dig into the science and you start reading some of the really frightening models, predictive models about what this climate and what this planet's going to look like if we don't do something really aggressive immediately.
Well, it's well said. And the reason we talk about it so often on the podcast, to me, it is the overarching issue of the world, really. It's game over if we don't get something done here. Most of the climate scientists say we have about 10 years or so, and then we've got irreversible problems that no matter what we do, we can't change. And of course, we've got a president, we've got a Congress for that matter, that's been sitting on its hands and doing nothing, fiddling while the earth literally burns. So, I like to talk about that at all, and I'm delighted to have you on the podcast because I don't get to talk to progressives very often, and I certainly don't get to talk to progressive politicians. And I keep flashing back to when we first met. Now, I didn't know much, if anything, about you at the time. But I think I just asked a kind of a general question of, what do you want to do as a U.S. Senator? Well, normally, if you talk to somebody from Iowa, what they'll say is, well, I want to make sure that farmers get their fair shake. And to me, I hear that and I think, okay, if you're a Republican particularly, that means you're going to help and you're probably getting money from big ag. But no, you're talking about small and lower income farmers that maybe need help. But I'm always thinking, that's kind of a parochial way to think of things. Even a lot of people will say, I want to do what my constituents want. I want to do everything for them. Well, why not look at it in a bigger picture, like, for instance, climate change? I mean, a Green New Deal, do things that maybe can save all of our lives and then work down to the to the local level. It always seems to go the other way. The other thing politicians will tell you is, well, I'm going to go to Washington and I'm going to show you how things can be done on a bipartisan basis. Or maybe if they're really aggressive, they'll say, well, I'm going to go to Washington and I'm going to fight for my constituents' points of view. Well, that hasn't worked very well lately. I don't know if anybody knows, but there's a guy in the Senate named Mitch McConnell that has to choke on his sippy cup when somebody says stuff like that. So I guess the question for you next is, I mean, how do you plan to go in there and fight, or do you plan to go in there and try to cooperate with Mitch McConnell and get things done for the benefits of Iowans and everyone?
Well, I guess I just don't, maybe it's a hazard of being a mediator for 17 years, and I've mediated a lot of people's divorces. I've helped a lot of people come to agreement that neither side really loved. And sometimes, here's the thing. I don't think that you have to sell out your principles or sell out your goals to get somewhere. And it takes a lot of different puzzle pieces to move the ball toward the goals that we want. So it takes activists, it takes people protesting, calling, writing, voting, refusing to vote for leaders any longer who aren't going to forward the things that they know are important and the things that everybody needs. But as a mediator, I guess I sort of reject the premise of the question that it's either or. So, one thing you learn as a mediator is there really, really are such things as, win-win, like both people can get a substantial amount in some cases of what they want, but all that said, I'm 55 years old and I've seen a lot and done a lot. I don't think naive is something I would say I am. So I understand that you really, and I can understand people thinking, well, that's not really answering the question. Well, this is not really a question that you can answer like yes, no, 1 or 0. You have to understand what exact situation are you talking about. I think people get frustrated sometimes with attorneys because they want to ask an attorney a question that's a vague question without concrete details and say, so what's the answer? And attorneys will often say, well, it depends, right? And people go, well, can't you just give me a yes or no answer? No, we can't, because we don't know all the details. And here's the thing, the devil is always in the details. So it's easy to say, and I understand why, because I'm the same. I want to hear yes or no, to most questions, right? The fact is life doesn't work that way. And so when you're trying to get something done, it's going to depend on who the players are, who's going to be in the Senate by the time I get there. I'm going to be one of 100 senators. I'm not going to be a magic fairy princess where I can just use my magic wand and make the rest of the Senate vote the way I want. So what can you get done given the players, given the climate? I don't mean the weather or the climate. I mean, like, given, do you have a lot of, voters calling and writing their representatives and are behind you on this issue, so that there's a lot of pressure from people that potentially are going to be voting for these people again or not. And And what are the exact issues? What are the exact issues we're talking about? And what's the exact bill in front of me? It's one thing to say, would you vote for a bill that does X? And again, I can say, well, in general, sure, but I want to see the details and I want to read that bill with a magnifying glass, because I know about legislation that things get buried in legislation that might not be good or might be good. I don't know, but I know that the devil is in page 7, subsection A, paragraph 3, 2, little I.
Yeah.
And so there could be half a sentence that changes a lot about that legislation. And if you don't read it carefully, you might be upset to find out you voted for something that you thought said one thing and it said something else. So, and the answer to, will I work with Mitch McConnell and other people? Well, I wouldn't have a choice. I mean, going to Washington and folding my arms and going, well, I'm here, now I'm not going to do anything because I hate Mitch McConnell. Well, that's not going to work. So, I guess some people maybe do that, but I don't think that's very effective. Couple of things you learn as a mediator about you learn a lot about human beings and how to get human beings to reach agreements. You learn to avoid buzzwords and labels. Buzzwords and labels are kind of useful if you're dealing with people that you already know agree with you, because then you can use a buzzword and they know that you probably both know what you're talking about. But when you use buzzwords and labels with people that might not agree with you 100%, it typically will just create a 10-foot thick wall immediately put up between the two of you, and the person that you're trying to talk to is never going to hear anything you're trying to say. So you have to first listen to other people to get them to ultimately perhaps come around more toward your point of view. That's where it starts. Somebody has to be the big enough person or the wise enough person, whatever you want to call it, to listen. And funny enough, sometimes when you listen really actively and intently to somebody, like sincerely listen to somebody that you really disagree with, then sometimes they will listen to you. Not always, you never know. But they certainly won't listen to you if you refuse to ever listen to them. That's the way most human beings work. And so you also have to develop relationships. You have to listen. It could be something in common, like we both have a 20-year-old son. We both have a dog. We both have whatever you can find with common ground with people that maybe you don't agree with much else on at all, it is a place to start talking and developing even the most superficial type of connection or relationship, which can sometimes help people come around a little bit more to your point of view. So trying to get things done is tricky. I mean, again, I've learned that as a mediator. It's very, very difficult. But I think if you want to gain the skills of trying to get things done, go mediate some divorces, because people are very emotional. People are dealing with, perhaps if they're in their 40s or 50s or 60s, they're dealing with either their life's assets financially or their life's debt. If they've got nothing but a bunch of debt, that's just as emotional and difficult. They're dealing with their home. They're dealing with children. They're dealing perhaps with who's going to spend what amount of time with their children that they both dearly love. So it's a lot of extremely intense emotional stuff. And if you've got the stability and the groundedness to sit there and help people mediate, and be the most stable and grounded and calm person in that room, then I think perhaps you've got what it takes to go to the United States Senate and try to work things out and get things done for the people that you're supposed to be representing back here in Iowa.
Oh, that's great. That's well said. And there's a lot of similarities there between a divorce and the United States of America right now, particularly with our two political parties, and maybe a lot of this mediation. I mentioned Mitch McConnell and the Republicans, but before going straight away at those folks, it has to be within your own party to get folks maybe to believe and come around and support more of your progressive type positions like Medicare for All and the Green New Deal. Now, one thing I want to say here to people that are watching this, when I brought Kimberly on, I didn't preface this by telling her the questions I was going to ask, so I'm coming at her a little bit out of right field here. But I wanted to ask you about something that we've been talking about on the podcast, really top of mind with me right now, and it's this CARES bailout package. Now, I mean, I'm really progressive. I'm out there. I'm on the left side of things, Kimberly, and I am really not impressed with this bailout package. It looks to me like an extreme upward movement of wealth and resources to the multinational corporations, a little bit in there to start with, maybe for people in the way of unemployment benefits. But again, it's these details that you were talking about. And that CARES package is 900 pages. And the Senate came back, and I've been criticizing Bernie Sanders because he was out on the campaign trail. There wasn't time for him to read it. I know that he didn't. He came back and voted for it. And I think it's, well, I think it's becoming known amongst Democrats, progressive or not, that it's not a good deal, and that's why they're wanting to do these subsequent bills to try to get some things in there for workers and for common people. What's your take or perception on that 900 plus pages of CARES?
Yeah. So right up on my computer right now, unfortunately, I'm famous for having like 15 or 20 tabs open. Up on my computer right now, behind what I see in our conversation, actually one of my tabs is a chart that I've been looking at in preparation for a series of debates that we have among the other candidates that are in this primary. And I forget all the exact statistics, but it's basically shows you the total amount of the stimulus package, and then breaks it down into like which constituencies are getting what amounts. And it was something like, I think this number is right, 500 billion, I believe, for multinational corporations, for large corporations. Some of us may have heard of that Shake Shack, which is a very profitable corporation doing very well, the Shake Shack restaurants, fast food restaurants. They were given, I think, about 10 or 11 million dollars, and they gave it back. And I think they may be the only ones who did. But they said, look, we don't need this. And when they found out, because, I mean, they have, even if they needed some capital in the short term to get through this storm, they have access to capital through a lot of other channels. They did not need this bailout in this, from this particular package, from this stimulus package. They have other sources of capital they could access. So do all these other multinational corporations. They can do the same thing. And so when the PPP money, which is the money that was supposed to go to help smaller businesses, and that's a side note, what the government considers a small business is probably not what you and I consider a small business, just for people that may not be aware of that. When we say small business, our federal government considers that a lot of times to be a 3 million, 5 million, 10 million, 15 million a year corporation. So I might think of the Corner Sundry on the square in Indianola, where I lived for 25 years, right?
Yeah.
That's a mom and pop, like I call those micro businesses. I might think of Mishmash Bake Shop in Indianola. My friend Helen Tremblay owns that. That's a small mom and pop business. I call it a micro business. So these bailouts went to these multinationals and oftentimes to so-called small businesses, but that you and I would probably call, a big business. Frankly, I would call that a big business. And they didn't need them. And instead, I mean, I've talked to several micro business owners in the last month or so here in central Iowa who have straight up told me that they went to apply for that PPP money to help their micro business weather this storm, and they have no cushion. They have no other sources of capital that they can go tap. And it was gone. The PPP money was gone by the time they even went to apply for it. And they didn't dawdle. They went and applied for it. But by the time they were able to get their applications processed, there was no money left for them.
That's key.
So it's not bailing out the people who need it. It's not helping kind of regular working people. It's sure as heck not helping a lot of very low income people. Yes, there's the unemployment, kind of beef up, increase in that unemployment amount. But that even that isn't going to necessarily cover everybody. It's going to depend on why you're unemployed and the details again of your own situation. But I think we also need to do what we should do in regards to figuring out how to handle our healthcare system in this country. And that is look to other developed nations and see if maybe they're doing something that's working for them and for their people that we should be doing here. And one of those things is we should look at how other nations are handling the COVID-19 crisis and what are they doing? What are they giving to their actual, lower and middle income working people to make it through this?
Yes.
I don't know the details, because I don't live there and I haven't dug into those details yet. But my understanding is, for example, Canada is providing something around $2,000 per month for about 3 months for their citizens. Now, there's details to that, but as opposed to $1,200 one-time payment for Americans, and thank you very much, goodbye.
Right. Well, and the other thing about it, I don't mean to interrupt, but Canada also has, for all intents and purposes, Medicare for all. And one of the biggest criticisms of this CARES package is, in the midst of a pandemic, there's nothing in there for healthcare. There's nothing in there for Medicare for all. It took Trump to say that he was going to pay for people's COVID-19 treatments. It wasn't in that package. It wasn't proposed or pursued by the Democrats in either the House or the Senate. Again, another one of my primary criticisms of it, and I think you've hit right on it. That money that's coming from that CARES package, it comes through immediately to the biggest multinational corporations, many of whom are sitting on record profits of all time. Like you said, don't need the money. Secondly, they don't pay taxes. I mean, thirdly, they're multinationals for what, and this is a U.S. bailout package, but because they get the money quickly, right at the beginning, they take all the error out when they do that. They have money and they buy things at depressed prices. They absorb companies. Walgreens is absorbing small pharmacies, an example. And by the time that money moves down, it just isn't how much money and who it's targeted to, but it's the velocity of the money, when they can actually access it or get it. And as you mentioned, those friends of yours, those small companies, they made their applications right away, but by the time they get their money, the harm is already going to be done. And again, I kind of feel guilty because I'm talking about all the things I want to talk about, and we're running out of time here. So, I wanted to give you time.
That's so true, though. But and they might not even get it. That's the point. They may not ever get any. And you mentioned about I just want to touch on this because this is another incredibly important point that I don't think very many people are aware of. I mean, I understand why. We're all just trying to survive. I don't expect regular people to necessarily know all this. I know all this because I'm running for office, and it's germane to what I'm the point I'm trying to make to people about why somebody like me should be elected. I just read day before yesterday, and so you can Google this. People can find this article. I'm sure it's in the Guardian, which is not really known for being, my understanding anyway, it's not known for being horribly left or horribly right. The Guardian, correct, I think, is known as being a fairly centrist type of publication. And there's a Guardian article from 2 days ago about the fact of what you just said, and they have some stats in there that the net worth of some extraordinarily already wealthy people who were worth billions when this pandemic started, they are now worth many more billions than they were a month and a half ago.
Yeah, here's a perfect example. Jeff Bezos, he's made $25 billion in personal wealth since the outbreak for himself. And Amazon workers have a difficult time getting the PPE. They're waiting on these minuscule unemployment benefits and support if they get laid off. They don't have health care if they lose their jobs. The dude that runs the company has personally made $25 billion. That's what you're talking about, right?
Yeah. And that's the same of other, there's other extremely wealthy people who have just used this pandemic. This pandemic has functioned for them as an ATM, they're just cashing out while so many people don't even have enough food to eat and are being kicked off their health insurance because we are one of the only developed nations. No, I'm sorry. I think it's the only developed nation that ties your employment to your medical insurance. And so now all these people that maybe even before thought, we don't need Medicare for all. I have good medical insurance with my job. I don't want to change it. I don't want Medicare for all. Well, now they don't have a job. So now they're thinking maybe Medicare for all is not a bad idea. But the thing that also is so great about Medicare for all or a universal single payer system is there could be an explosion of entrepreneurship in this country if people were able to leave the jobs that maybe they don't necessarily love. They want to start a business of their own and they can't because they've already researched the cost of paying for insurance entirely by themselves without an employer paying any portion of it. And they know they can't afford that because that's going to be $2,000 or $3,000 a month for a plan with a $5,000 or $10,000 deductible for their family. There's just no way that you can be a micro starting out business, a mom and pop business, and even begin to just even pay for your medical insurance.
So it stifles the American way, or what we think is the American way anyway.
Yes.
It hurts the economy. It hurts everyone. The entrepreneurship. I tell folks, anybody that'll listen to me anyway, healthcare in this country determines whether or not you're born to start with. Where you live, who your parents are, where you live, where you go to school, what job you take, when you retire. And in a lot of people's instances, it determines when and where they die. I mean, it's crazy how healthcare controls this all. Well, again, we're running out of time. I want to turn this over to you here at the end to kind of make your kind of position statement or take us out here with how you'd like to tell folks about your candidacy, first of all, amongst the Democratic candidates, but then ultimately against the woman we mentioned at the onset, Joni Ernst.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. Oftentimes, the candidates that don't take any corporate PAC money, which we don't, and don't take any corporate lobbyist money, which we don't. And by the way, that's kind of a little out that some Democrats are using just for people that don't understand the differences. I know if I weren't running for office, I wouldn't understand these nuances. So there's corporate PAC money, which is money basically coming from corporations. And a lot of Democrats, almost all of them nowadays, will say, I'm not taking corporate PAC money. And that's great. And they're not. But they're taking other ways. They're getting corporate money through other ways that allows them to still say, I'm not taking corporate PAC money. One of those ways is taking money from individual corporate lobbyists who individually will write $1,000 checks, $2,800 checks, or double max out, which means both people in a couple can give $2,800 each and max out donate to a candidate. So, one of the people that's running for this seat has taken tens of thousands of dollars from a lot of lobbyists for these multinational corporations, from big tobacco, big healthcare, big pharma, fossil fuel industry lobbyists. So I think that that's important to know because I don't believe that those donations come without understood strings on the back end. And I think that there's a lot of influence that happens through those donations. But so a lot of times candidates like me have a difficult time raising the money necessary to simply get our message out. And obviously, if people don't know you exist, they can't vote for you. They're not going to vote for you because they've just never heard of you. Well, I knew that would be a challenge we would have because we're not going to have millions and millions of dollars until after we win the primary. After we win the primary, I'm not concerned because there's going to be plenty of people wanting to flip the Senate, and we'll be able to raise the money. But it's difficult in a contested primary. All that said, there was a Des Moines Register Mediacom poll that came out in early March. Polls are very expensive for people that don't know. It can be $50,000, $100,000 to pay a good pollster to do a poll for you so that you know where you stand. And we don't have that kind of money. We've raised all in about $240,000, $250,000 over this campaign, which is not bad, but it's not millions. And I have a staff of 5 I have to pay every month. Plus, we have to pay the IDP $60,000 to just purchase the voter file that we need to run this race. All that said, we won. We came in first in the Des Moines Register Mediacom poll. We had the highest name recognition among all Iowa voters. It was Democrats and Republicans. And we had the highest favorability rating. So people thought the best of our campaign and had heard of me. And that's pretty amazing compared to the amount of money that the more, the DSCC-backed kind of more centrist, for lack of a better label, I guess, candidate in this race she actually came in third, and I came in first, and Admiral Mike Franken came in second, and then candidate Greenfield came in third. So all that to say, we have an actual shot, because this is a pretty low turnout primary. So we didn't have to reach millions of voters in this primary to win. We have a real shot at winning. So if people want to support the campaign, that's incredibly helpful, especially in these last 3 weeks or so that we have before the June 2nd election. People are already voting by mail right now. If you can volunteer or donate, you can go to KimberlyForIowa.com, Kimberly for FOR, KimberlyForIowa.com, and check out our campaign and sign up to join us or donate. We would love to have the support.
Well, that's great. And I'm going to do what I can to get the word out, because we're of like mind on so many of these issues. And again, I want to thank her for coming on the podcast, because she's got she's got everyone at mind, or as far as these global issues are concerned, right down to the local level. And that's not very common in today's world. Folks, that's Kimberly Graham. She's the Democratic candidate here. Got a primary coming up very shortly in the state of Iowa to run against Joni Ernst. Wish her well. Wish her all the best. And Kimberly, thanks again for coming on Podcast by George.
Oh, thank you so much, George. I really appreciate it.
That's going to wrap it up. That's going to do it. If you like this podcast, if you want to follow along and see more of them, subscribe on YouTube, ring the notification bell, like us there, like us on Facebook, and follow us on Twitter, iTunes, Spotify, every place where podcasts are seen or heard. But for right now, that's going to do it. That's another podcast by George.